Hi, everybody. Bethany Dotson, relationship coach and trauma-informed somatic therapist. And I'm going live with you today, a little impromptu. I was actually planning to go live earlier today, but I have experienced some personal challenges revolving around grief. And this live was originally titled "The Biggest Fear Keeping You Loveless and Unhappy After a Narcissistic Ex," but I decided to shift that to talk about really the 3 or 4 biggest fears that are ultimately keeping you stuck after a divorce or a narcissistic ex. And so without much further ado, I would like to dive right into it. The first concept is less of a fear, really, and more of a concept that I don't know that we really talk enough about, and that is the concept of grief. So in my experience, when we have women in Break the Cycle who are trying to heal or trying to date again effectively after a series of setbacks and failures in her love life, most notably a narcissistic relationship, what I find is that a lot of these women have a lot of unprocessed emotion around their ex. And there's a concept in grief recovery called disenfranchised grief. And disenfranchised grief is a type of grief that is not really acceptable. Disenfranchised grief, an example of this might be, for example, a school shooter. The school shooter walks into a high school and sadly murders a lot of people. But the family of the school shooter, his or her parents, her family, it would not be, and even publicly in the media, it wouldn't be seen as appropriate to grieve the actual school shooter. And so I bring up this concept of disenfranchised grief because a lot of women and men, but since I work with high achieving women, a lot of women, when they leave a bad marriage or when they leave a toxic relationship, and especially if they've had multiple toxic relationships, experience disenfranchised grief. And disenfranchised grief is a type of grief that it's not really acceptable to be grieving. It's not really acceptable to be grieving an abuser. It's not really acceptable to be grieving the hope and the fantasy of what could have been. You may not do it publicly. You may not even do it at all. You may just, continue focusing on all the bad things and bad qualities about your ex and justifying why it was the right thing, the right move, the right decision to leave because he was a narcissist or she was a narcissist. But what often happens in my experience when I work with clients is that they move forward with their lives and they never deal with this grief, really. They instead internalize that a lot and will cope with that feeling, cope with the loss, cope with the sadness, cope with the trauma by being a workaholic, by getting on with her life, by continuing to binge research, by ruminating. But there's never a healthy expression and a healthy way of processing that grief. And in Break the Cycle, we do a lot of work on forgiveness. And this is usually the part where a lot of people have a lot of emotion that they're surprised by. And as human beings, we are designed to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And this goes way back to our caveman and cavewoman days when we're trying to survive in dinosaurs and there's lions and tigers outside. And we carry over that hardwired biological response. So the first thing that may really be holding you back and keeping you stuck, even if you've left and it's been years and you haven't had any success in dating and you still feel emotionally stuck and you may still be tolerating bad work environments or people pleasing or draining your energy, the first thing to realize is that you may actually have some unprocessed grief that you haven't given yourself permission to feel and move through, which brings me to the second fear, which is a fear of feeling. So I want to speak about this fear gingerly because a lot of women who experience narcissistic abuse and trauma in an intimate relationship learn how to survive in that relationship by shutting down their feelings, by shutting down their intuition, by shutting down their instincts and how they truly feel. And essentially, in many cases, learning how to walk on eggshells and learning how to survive the ups and the downs and the chaos and the roller coaster. And so a result of having to walk on eggshells and not knowing when the next shoe is going to drop is that you become emotionally numb. Psychology calls this disassociation. And I see this a lot in the women that I work with. They they want to feel, they really do. But they will often it feels so foreign to them. And what I found is that a lot of the fear behind wanting to feel is they're afraid of actually feeling all of the sadness. They're afraid of feeling the shame. They're afraid of feeling the grief over an ex that is toxic. They're afraid of feeling because they have another fear that if they allow themselves to feel those feelings, it's going to ruin them. It's going to take them out. And this is often the same kind of fear that kept her in an unhealthy relationship. We have these instincts where we sense red flags. 99% or more of the women that I work with knew immediately that their partner was bad news, but she continued to override that due to past trauma programming. But that fear of allowing herself to feel again is quite strong in my experience. And a lot of women will turn to chronic busyness. People turn to chronic busyness because their nervous system and their brain is so used to living in chaos that it feels foreign to not live in chaos. I'm going to say that again. People who are used to living in chaos in a relationship will continue to live in chaos outside of the relationship in their own lives by being a workaholic, by staying chronically busy, by piling more things on their plate, by never having enough time, by feeling overwhelmed all the time, by unconsciously creating all of this chaos, because not living in chaos feels foreign. It feels weird. It feels actually uncomfortable. So a big way that a lot of people keep themselves numb emotionally and disassociating is just by chronic busyness and becoming a robot, becoming a zombie. I'm thinking of the Netflix. I mean, was it Netflix? The zombie show that was a really, really big, 10 years ago, and they filmed it in Georgia. Anyway, they become like that, and they just become like they're just existing. They wake up in the morning, they're breathing, they're eating their breakfast, they're skipping breakfast. They're going to work and they're just dialing it in. A lot of the people that we work with are just skimming the surface at work. And then feel like a failure because they're usually high performers and, are used to achieving a certain level of status. So the second big fear after disenfranchised grief is a fear of actually feeling your feelings, a fear of actually feeling anything, feeling happy. So this will be a big barrier for you moving forward. And unfortunately, a lot of women that I speak to on breakthrough calls are so used to living in this fear place that they don't even know that they're living in it until we start working together. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been living like this. So I thought it was bad, but I didn't realize to the extent of how I've been self-sabotaging myself. A lot of people will enter dating from this place. And if you're watching this and you have dated after a divorce or dated after a narcissistic ex and have found yourself, pardon my French, shit out of luck, it is because most likely you are entering that arena from an energetic place of fear. And if you enter any type of goal, whether that's finding a healthy partner, starting a business, from an energetic space of fear and doubt and like, oh my gosh, and your cup is empty, you are going to meet more disappointment. So the third fear is one of the big ones, and this is usually like the root cause of why you get into toxic relationships to begin with and toxic work environments. And it's the root cause behind why you people please, why you ignore red flags, why you tolerate bad behavior. And this is a fear of abandonment. Not everybody that we work with has logical or glaring abandonment issues from childhood, meaning their parents stayed together. So I want to speak clearly that most of the time your abandonment wounds are going to come from somewhere in your childhood, just like all things originate from. And maybe your parents stayed together, but maybe you had a parent who was a workaholic and who was never present emotionally. That's a form of abandonment. So it's really important to realize that when we're between the ages of 2 and 7, our brain waves are super slow, meaning they're in theta. Theta is the brain wave that hypnotists get you in when they're trying to induce hypnosis on you. So, and that's because you were the most suggestible in a theta brainwave state. So when you're a kid between 2 and 7, your brain is just naturally operating in theta, which means that everything that you witness in your environment, you take on as the truth. It's the truth. And as a kid, you don't have the brain development yet or the executive thinking yet. Your prefrontal cortex isn't fully online yet to discern, is this really true for me or not? So what happens as a result of that is if you did experience abandonment issues in your childhood, a lot of kids take that on, that there's something wrong with them, that they did something wrong, whether you consciously remember doing that or not, consciously made that meaning or not, it gets in there that you did something wrong. And a lot of people will overcompensate for their abandonment issues by being an overachiever, by being a people pleaser, by wanting to be perfect, by wanting to work really, really hard and get a bunch of degrees and get a bunch of money and put a bunch of money in the bank. And I would say 100% of the clients that I work with have achieved success in certain degrees of their life, but at the end of the day, they still have abandonment issues. And so the key here is your fear of abandonment is going to drive you to do stuff that's going to inevitably cause you to hit the inner self-destruct button, that's going to cause you to get into unfavorable situations, romantic relationships, work environments, and you have to heal the root cause. There are three main, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating, 3 main ways your abandonment issues are going to derail and sabotage your happiness and your love, your chances at having a great relationship with yourself, first and foremost, and with other people. If you have unhealed abandonment trauma, the biggest thing that you're going to do in relationships or even work environments is try to change somebody's behavior. And this could be even in your own family. You might be trying to change your kids' behavior, trying to change your sister's behavior, trying to change the new guy that you're dating, but you know he's got an alcoholic, he's a drinker. You're trying to get him to like realize his potential. You kind of slip into what a lot of people will call codependent behavior. You're going to try to change that person's behavior. When that inevitably fails, you are going to try to change your behavior to fit that relationship, and that involves cutting off what you want, your dreams, your goals, your intuition, your feelings, yourself with a capital S, to fit inside that increasingly small, confined box of a toxic relationship. And then when you have failed to change the other person and you've tried to change yourself and that's not working either, most people enter the hell zone, which is resignation, where they numb themselves to the circumstances and they just continue to tolerate and go on for years. And unfortunately, we work with a lot of people who've been in bad marriages for decades, and they knew before getting engaged that this person had behavior issues and thought that they could handle it, thought that they could overcome that behavior, thought that things would get better. And that continued to last for decades. And a natural byproduct, going back to point number 2, is that you're going to develop clear, like clinical levels of disassociation to tolerate that type of a relationship. And that does not go away with time. From a trauma-informed perspective, it does not go away by just continuing to talk about what happened in the past. It does not go away by continuing to research your ex's pathological, psychopathic, narcissistic behavior. It happens by employing on a consistent basis a trauma-informed plan to literally, because your brain and your nervous system get wired a certain way when you go through experiences like that. And it doesn't get wired magically to a healthy way when you leave. You're going to try to keep creating circumstances in your life. And this is why so many people, and we work a lot with women who have had a bad marriage, and they got out and they took many years off after their divorce to just be a mom and be successful in her career. And then the first guy that she opens her heart to is even more toxic than her ex-husband. Why is that? Because this trauma has not been effectively healed yet. And what she was doing usually in those years between marriage number one and bad relationship number two was just a lot of coping that was temporarily helping her feel better, but she was still ultimately people pleasing, overwhelming herself, being an overachiever, and ultimately not feeling happy. And this leads me to the final fear, which is actually quite ironic. The biggest fear that most people have that's holding them back after a narcissistic ex is a fear of actually being happy, a fear of being successful in a relationship, a fear of actually having a healthy, intimate relationship. Why is a fear of success such a big fear? You would think that somebody would want at some point to have a great relationship. And there's a couple of big reasons for this. Number one, like I said before, you go through so much circumstance, negative, traumatic, relational issues over time, it just becomes normal for you. Your fear, your disassociation becomes normal for you. And so anything else, even though your fear and your disassociation are abnormal, to you, they may feel normal. And anything outside of that comfort zone is going to feel initially like a threat. And this is why you may have taken time off after your ex, gotten on a few dating apps, put yourself out there a little bit, met inevitable disappointment and rejection, and then retreated and went back. Because anything out of your comfort zone that is leaning towards happiness or success, if you have relational trauma, is going to at first feel like a threat. It's going to feel uncomfortable until you continue overcoming that, you continue rewiring, you continue adjusting your nervous system to new, bigger, expansive, happier scenarios in your life, and continuing conditioning your nervous system to be happy every day versus being numb or feeling shame or feeling resentment for your ex still, and continuing to numb yourself by being a workaholic. So the fear of success is ultimately a big thing that a lot of people are not truly aware that they're living with. Most people that I speak with on the phone, their biggest fears, I'm afraid I'm going to attract another narcissist. This is a big fear that we hear here, but that's really not the ultimate fear. The ultimate fear is a fear of feeling her feelings, a fear of abandonment ultimately, and a fear of actually succeeding in a healthy relationship, a fear of actually being seen, of actually being validated, of being heard in a healthy, romantic, intimate relationship. And a lot of times that fear of succeeding in a healthy relationship is really, if you are super attracted to somebody and you've got a great, healthy relationship, subconsciously, that's a threat to your trauma, because somebody healthy, there's a higher stake emotionally for them to leave you. And so subconsciously, we tend to sabotage that opportunity from ever happening by continuing to choose, consciously or unconsciously, unavailable people, emotionally abusive people. One of the big things that a lot of high-performing women will do is they tend to choose men who are just, they don't quite have as much motivation. They got a lot of big ideas, but they haven't executed on them yet. Maybe they have a bad relationship with their ex-wife and their kids don't talk to them. They tend to attract men that seem to have kind of like a lot of issues. And because she's such a problem solver and such a hard worker, at first it feels good to be helping somebody. And for a woman who's a high performer and who has abandonment issues, helping a romantic partner overcome their stuff is going to initially give you a temporary jolt of security. This person can't leave me because I'm helping him so much. This person won't leave me because look at all that I've done for him. And again, this goes into codependent behavior. But the big things that I would like to leave you with today is that if you're stuck in working, if you're stuck in, maybe you're an empty nester at this point in your life, or maybe you will be an empty nester soon. Maybe your husband moved on way quicker than you ever thought possible. Maybe the guy that you were dating moved on really, really, really fast as well. And you're still here months or years later, and you're not having any success, and you just feel like you're existing. The big things that you need to remember, it's quite possible that you are still living with a lot of unprocessed grief. You're still living as a disassociated person. Disassociation is a trauma response. You're still likely using unhealthy coping strategies to deal with your pain instead of actually feeling it and processing it effectively. The big root issue here is you have unhealed abandonment trauma that needs to be healed effectively. And you ultimately have a subconscious fear of success. So if you want love, if you want to feel happy every day, if you want to have a loving relationship with yourself, it is not possible to do that and achieve that and have that when your primary emotional home is fear. You have to recondition that. And if you have relational trauma, it requires a trauma-informed plan, which is what we do here inside of Break the Cycle. We give you a daily protocol every day. You do it every day. This is not going into therapy and venting about your crappy week and then leaving and then feeling better and then going back and feeling crappy the next day. This is about rewiring your brain and your nervous system every day and giving you challenges out of your comfort zone, activities that are going to stretch your comfort zone, that are going to help you step out of the identity of the woman who always fails, the woman who doesn't feel attractive, the woman who worries if a guy is ever going to value her or love her, and helping you step into embody, not just logically think about the guy but really feel as the woman who is worthy of love, and help you take action every week that is going to get you closer to your goals. I say this to clients a lot. When we're left up to our own devices, we tend to take the easy way out. And trust me, I've done thousands of breakthrough calls with people, and 90% of the people that I speak with, they take the easy way out because as human beings, we are wired to do the easiest thing. We're wired our brains like habits, even if they're bad habits. So if you're listening to this and this resonated with you and you're a high achieving woman, you're driven, you're ambitious, when you're not in a dysfunctional relationship, life is pretty good, but it's not really great. And maybe you're struggling to overcome a narcissistic partner. Maybe you've never had a great relationship and you were in a place in your life where there's this calling in your heart. There's this intuitive nudge that you can't keep living like this anymore. And you are sick and tired of standing in your own way. You've had therapy, you've gotten a lot of insights, but you are still repeating your dysfunctional stuff. You were still essentially a dysfunctional person operating in relationships and trying to get your needs met. Then I invite you to book a free breakthrough call. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk. We'll have a very honest, keyword is honest, eye-opening conversation about your pattern. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not a broken person. You're not a defective person. You just have unhealthy patterns that you're not fully aware that you're doing that are keeping you stuck. So we're gonna get you super clear on your pattern, but most importantly, we're gonna get you super clear on what you want, how you want to be feeling, what kind of guy you want to have in your life, how you want to be living your life after your ex. And if we feel confident that we can help you make these changes and heal your trauma while making these changes, then we will talk about what it looks like to work together. So that is the biggest fear, is holding you back from love and happiness after a narcissistic ex. And I look forward to being with you next week. Have a great week.